Welcome, Peter.
Thank you.
You're live on the air.
Welcome to you.
Yeah, thanks for joining us tonight.
Yes.
We're very excited to hear about your adventures in Romania with all these characters that you encountered.
Yeah. Can I just set up this book, Transylvanian Sunrise? The way I understand the book, which I read with rapt attention, is that it was told to you by Radu Cinema, and he was the one who was interacting with the main character, Caesar, in the book. Is that correct?
That is correct. I have not interacted with any of these characters except for Radu by email and letters. I have not met Caesar. I have not met Radu in person. Mm-hmm. I have interacted with the time travel scientist David Anderson, and with several people in Romania. I have extensive friends and connections in Romania, but the accessibility of these characters is in the most secret realm of the secret government over there.
Right, and you have actually changed their names in the book. Is that correct, that these aren't their true names?
I haven't changed their names. They have allegedly changed their names. I don't know. I have been told by people in the government that he is indeed in the government. Mm-hmm. So it's not exactly. I'm not walking on completely thin ice.
Oh, no, I wasn't inferring that at all.
No,
what I
I
meant
think
was
it's
that,
important to cover
some
that ground.
Some of our listeners might want to send them an email or something, so I was trying to ascertain whether these were their real names.
No, and in fact, I haven't received any email from him in almost a year. So he's been very silent in the last year for some of the politics behind the politics of what goes on in the most secret realms of what controls our world.
Mm-hmm. Well, do you have any knowledge? I mean, this book, I just was actually vibrating with the energy of the book. And it really makes such a story that people, I'm not as eloquent speaker as you are, Peter, but that people could have a hard time wrapping their mind around the information that's in the book. But the way I was getting it was that it was absolutely true.
I can't vouch for that it's absolutely true because I don't know that. It's certainly a very powerful book, and maybe we should start by discussing the book rather than so people will know what we're talking about.
Okay.
It's a book about a chamber that was discovered in 2003 August, or opened up in 2003 August, as a result of the U.S. Military or Pentagon having ground-penetrating radar that was operating from satellites that was showing that there was a region underneath the Romanian Sphinx. There's a Sphinx in Romania, in the Bucegi Mountains of Romania, which is very close to the border of Transylvania, and which is a region in Romania, by the way. And so this chamber, there's something there. How could this chamber be if there's no apparent access points to it? So they wanted to get into this chamber, and this is the quest of the book, and the quest of the book is about how this chamber was accessed and all the politics behind it. The main character of the book, who is Caesar Brad, and Caesar Brad is somebody who was born with a huge umbilical cord that's very thick, and the doctors can't cut it, so they have to saw it off, and they notify the security department of the communist Romania at that time. Any strange births are reported to them, and this starts a whole involvement of this child's life as a baby. So he's monitored by a paranormal department that has been created by a liaison with the Red Chinese government, Communist China, a mysterious Dr. Zen. And Dr. Zen monitors this kid and tutors him to where he's the head of the Romanian Department Zero, which is their most secret service. And it's so secret that most people don't even know about it. Only the president and the head of security know about it. So it's his destiny is to become the head of this department and open up this chamber, or oversee the events which open up this chamber, because it takes a liaison between the government of Romania, the secret government of Romania, and the government of the United States, because the United States has the technology to open this chamber with atomic lasers. It's very hard to open, and it's a secret union which is forged very interestingly by Italian Freemasonry that's tied to the Vatican. And that is the antagonist in the book, the classic evil persona is Signor Mazzini, who is who he's the one who orchestrates between the Pentagon, and this is a secret deployment of American services and so because Romania and America are opening up this chamber, both presidents find out about it, President Bush and the president of Romania, because of events that are described in the book, because it's all done in secrecy. And when they find out about it, the brown stuff hits the fan, because they say, what are our troops doing in Romania? What are our American troops doing here? What the hell is going on? And the people in charge of the project have to explain to their respective authorities, who are the real government, what's going on. And this forges an alliance between the two countries, and you see this in NATO. All of a sudden, Romania becomes a part of NATO, and there is a union, because Romania and America never had relations. America bombed Romania heavily during World War II, because that's where the Nazis had their oil supplies. And Romania changed sides towards the end of the war, towards the Allied side. But there's never been good relations between the Americans and the Romanians until now, diplomatically. I mean, there were minimal relations at best. So now, because they were a communist country until 1989, and that started a lot of changes in Romania. And so there is, and this big issue over what's been found in this book, in this chamber beneath, which I haven't even described was in the chamber, this has created some of the most political backdoor infighting that you will not see in the newspapers. We saw riots in Egypt. Was that almost 2 years ago? I believe those riots in Egypt, which was tied to this stuff. And right now, all the tension is in Transylvania, in the core of Transylvania, where I was just recently this year. But this is an esoteric war. This is a secret gamesmanship that goes on behind the scenes. And, right now people in the conspiracy field are more concerned with chemtrails and HARP and, whatever god-awful craziness that...
FEMA camps and things like that. And, sure. So, but this is like levels of secrecy. I mean, it's just an amazing amount of secrecy involved in this. It's amazing you ever got the story out, given the fact that so much of this came from deep within intelligence organizations and the Pentagon. Have you ever been followed or watched or harassed by any of these agencies? Because you did get the story out.
The best way to deal with me, I caused a lot of problems in 1992 when I released the Montauk Project, because what I was able to do was package in not only a commercially viable reference frame, but a coherent reference frame, some novel ideas about time, the science of time, which is due to the insight and knowledge of Preston Nichols. Preston Nichols could only take us so far with his explanations of time. They caught the attention of a time travel scientist, Dr. David Anderson, who is now doing very avant-garde experiments with time in New Mexico and in Mumbai, India, near Mumbai, India. So they have the largest time travel facilities, laboratory facilities in the world, in India.
But then, my question is, I mean, have you been basically under surveillance because you did release information, and it doesn't sound like the government necessarily wanted it to be released? I mean, I can tell you that Helene and I, once we started this radio show, both had black helicopters over our house, and here we are just doing a show that's paranormal, it's entertainment, it's done from our hearts with a lot of love, but yet all of a sudden these things are happening with us, and this is much more innocuous than the type of information that you released in that book.
Well, I had the black helicopters follow me for a while, so to speak. I one time had, when we released the Montauk Project, I think the first printing was 3,000. It was sold out in about 3 or 4 months. I had 5,000. That was sold out in about 6 or 7 months. And I had 10,000. And when I had 10,000 books delivered, that one book, okay, we had not published any other book.
Right.
And that started our book company, Sky Books. I actually had a stealth fighter. It was within 100 yards flying over the delivery.
My goodness.
And the truck driver remembered it. And years later, I had the same truck driver. He remembered that stealth.
He did.
Yeah, it was a stealth fighter, and it was too low. And it's kind of, what is that? It's just sort of some quantum synchronicity. I mean, are they sending a message? There have been, what you would, I guess you call the counter-insurgency sort of manifests in different ways. There's various monitoring factors. But as I was saying earlier, that caused them a lot of reaction, a lot of problems. And at the same time that was going on in the early 90s was the militia movement and people questioning the constitutionality of what people in our government were doing. And that was a much bigger problem to them.
Okay.
And so you had the Ruby Ridge massacre, you had the Waco massacre, the Oklahoma City bombing, and if you look into those, Jesse Ventura went into the 9/11 conspiracy, but he hasn't really gone into the Oklahoma City bombing, the Ruby Ridge, and Waco, and how all those things were tied together. And the Montauk Project was small potatoes in terms of, because it was, and we were not politically motivating people to riot or to overthrow the government, and we were left alone for that reason. In fact, they appreciated that we were not trying to overthrow the government by force. Mm-hmm. So you
kind of fell down very low on the totem pole.
On the priority scale, because there are people who were, and I would say that these people were seeking to reestablish the meaningful implementation of the Constitution. However, you're not playing. It's like there's all sorts of laws in the United States that are not implemented, that are real laws. It's the implementation only takes place with the powers that be. And this is throughout history. What is convenient to the ruling authority? We see this all the time. It's rule by force. And this goes into very deep occult correspondences, which have to do with the will and to do with the biblical formula for God. And the occult, more so the occult formula for God, but it's in the Bible too. Tetragrammaton, which is Yod He, Vau He, earth, air, fire, water, and this is symbolized by the will.
Right.
When Aleister Crowley says "do what thou wilt," he's not saying "do your will." Do not go eat that ice cream sundae that you can't get away from. That's the will of the God as it's been expressed in not only occultism, but in the Bible, which is the 4 elements. Do the will, and that will is fourfold, and it moves according to its own reference frame. And these are the forces that rule the world.
Right, and these are the natural forces, yes.
They're natural forces, but they manifest in different ways and according to its own tune and its own time. That does not mean that you cannot interact with it, but when you come down to laws, sometimes you can go enforce a law to get a satisfaction either in civil court or in criminal court, and sometimes you can't.
Right.
And
let me just bring you back to this holographic Hall of Records. And now, have you actually, I know you've been to Romania. Have you been to this location where the Sphinx is? Did you have any access to this Hall of Records yourself?
No, I've not been in the Hall of Records. I've been to Romania 5 times. I've been to the Sphinx 3 times. And if you go to the Sphinx, well, first off, I have a pretty good idea, if I wanted to find this area, how I might go there. But it's hidden. It's hidden with, trees. It's cordoned off. They don't want the public going there.
Oh,
I've been told if you go from the Sphinx in a certain area, you'll get chased off by guards. But there's roads that go up, back roads, and then they built it. They didn't build it from right in the area. It's like if you go to the Sphinx, you're not going to see any, army tunnels or any installations. You'll see installations up there, like a huge antenna, and it's not. There are people up there. It's the most popular tourist spot in Romania, but it's how you get there into the what's called Alpha Base is nearby. Well, at Alpha Base, there's Alpha Base, which is nearby, but there's also, I guess, what you call the little unit or compound right by the entrance to the mountainside. And that's I asked to go there on my first trip. David Anderson, where do you want to visit in Romania? And I said, I want to see the Hall of Records. And he actually made contacts with his friends in the government. But in the end, I was referred to Radu's publisher, who is also the publisher of my books in Romania. And no, it was not possible for me to even see Radu. Radu said he would visit me in America, but that has not taken place yet.
Well, that's too bad. I mean, we would love for you to get in there and report back to us, because it sounds like the most bizarre experience. I mean, when I read the book, I was just fascinated by what you were writing. It was so different than anything I had ever read. It was like right out of something I'd watch on the Sci-Fi Channel, but better.
Yeah, it's better because it ties to reality. Now, I should tell you that I've spoken to Romanians who claim to have knowledge or insight into these matters. And my bonds and relationships with Romanians have grown over the last 5 years, which is a very good thing. But some people are highly opinionated. Some people are very highly opinionated and say, well, that chamber is in another dimension. It's not in this dimension. Some say it's in this dimension. I think Radu would say that it is in this dimension. But we should tell people what's in the chamber. And what's in the chamber, once you get into the core of it, because there's quite a tunnel it takes to get there. And it's high tables. Tables are about 6 feet high, so that you can't sit down. If you're our size, they're for more of a giant people. And of course, they found huge giant skeletons in Romania that they don't know what to make out of.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, I remember reading about that. Sure.
Yeah, and it was really funny. There was a YouTube. They showed a TV show, and it was all in Romanian. And it was a guy who had a TV show, and he was explaining the giant. And they were showing them. It was like a talk show, but it was sort of a talk show on the paranormal. And I recognized the guy on there because I know him. He's a writer in Romania that I've sat and had dinner with many times.
Oh my goodness!
At the camp, and I said, "Oh my God, he's got a TV show." And I found out it was a new TV show. And as soon as they showed this, some caller called in, and he basically told them to knock it off. He was like from the government or something, and the show was canceled. I mean,
oh my goodness!
It was yes. So anyway, this table is like very, I guess, like an iPod and then an iPad and then some. Mm-hmm. You put your hand over it, and it reads out your DNA, a holographic projection. It's all about holography. And then it will read out your DNA. If you put it closer on the table, it will read it out molecularly, then atomically. And if you put your hand over another region, it'll show what the biology of another life form would be, and it will show the star system. So you'll have different biology from a different star system, and if you put the two hands together at the same time, it will show a hybridization of those two life forms. What would creature, a bipedal hominid from Arcturus look like combined with a bipedal hominid from Earth, or maybe from the Pleiades or Orion, or whatever the star system might be. So this is a data bank of DNA and a veritable Noah's Ark. But it shows you that the Noah's Ark analogy is a very, I guess what you call attenuated analogy of what the potential of people was. That occurred, I think, 10,000 years ago, Noah's Ark, if we want to consider the Bible to be a little bit true.
Right.
And this chamber is supposedly 50,000 years old,
oh my
as best
God.
as they can tell. And it's more advanced than any technology we have today, at least any technology that we know about in the common reference frame. So this, and then as you get deeper into it, and there's more in this chamber. It was investigated for only a short time at the time that first book was written. It was only about 6 weeks of investigation, and the author was allowed to come there and see the chamber. He was the spokesperson for the chamber, as opposed to me. I didn't even know about it, but he was the one chosen by Caesar to write about this, and he eventually gets pulled into Department Zero himself as the later books ensue. Because that's the first of 4 books. I'm working on the 4th book right now. It'll be released in a few months.
And what will be the title of that one, Peter?
The Secret Parchment, 5 Tibetan Initiation Techniques. And this is a much more volatile bag of worms than is the book we're just describing. It's much more volatile in terms of the political gyrations going around it, and the spiritual current is much higher. And it's only this that I want to complete talking about the chamber, but it's that spiritual aspect, I can say, which might explain why it's possible to negotiate these hurdles instead of just being overwhelmed by them. But
Peter, we're going to have to stop here and honor our sponsors at the moment, okay? I'm so looking forward to continuing this fascinating discussion. Yes. It's amazing, huh, Patricia?
This is great. Again, thank you so much, Peter, for joining us, and I hope our listeners will stay tuned, and we'll come back right after this commercial break and talk more about this exciting subject.
And thank you all for staying tuned and staying with Peter Moon, author of Transylvanian Sunrise and also Transylvanian Moonrise, among many other books that are available on Amazon.com. Is that correct, Peter?
That's correct. Okay. Also at skybooks.usa.com.
skybooks.usa.com. I'll be sure and get that up on the website for you. So we have a question here from the chat room. And someone called Gray Artist wants to know if there's any chance that this information will ever be made public.
Well, it's been made public in the book. That's the first step is through the book. Mm-hmm. If you had now there is a chance, but see, the Romanian mindset is to release the information. Not all of the Romanians, but Romania, the whole history and ancient history of Romania is a very deliberately obfuscated thing, that we all come from that area. That's where mankind geologically had to withdraw to during the Ice Age. Transylvania, in particular, was protected during the Ice Age. It didn't freeze over, but all of Europe did, with maybe some very minor exceptions. So this is where people receded to around 10,000 years ago, or whenever that Ice Age period was, and so it's the antecedents of our culture, and all our genetics come from that area. Now you'll find the Caucasus Mountains is where mankind supposedly originated from. It's not far from the Caucasus Mountains. So it's that. But it's Transylvania in particular, and that the Romanian language, the ancient Romanian language, is really the Indo-European language. But you'll read that, they formed their language from the Romans, which is just preposterous if you study the history. Yet academia is very adamant about it, and they're very stupid, and incredibly stupid, because they don't know the Romanian language. Who studies the Romanian language? I study the Romanian language because I go there. There's no reason except the people in Romania, they can pick up languages very quickly. It's older than Latin.
So the mindset, then you're saying that to answer the question for Gray Artist here, so then the mindset from Romanians is let's make this public. Let's let everybody know. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, yes. But the Americans, thank you for getting me back to the question. The Americans, we are the kings of secrecy in America, and that's the whole 1947 National Security Act. It's all about secrets. Mm-hmm. It's the biggest military weapon in America is secrets. Secrecy, censorship.
Yeah. We don't like that, though, do we, Helene?
No.
We've been under that by law since the National Security Act of 1947, which follows Roswell and
yeah. I mean, it's
all
all
of the
about
research.
What you're talking about, Peter, is knowledge is power, and so if they have the knowledge and we don't, then it's power over us. But this is our history. When you talk about this chamber and this holographic hall of records, it's about our history, is it not? This is about also other civilizations that came here, and I mean, it's a rich history that we're being deprived of.
Yes, it is a core history, and America politics, not only on the obvious politics of the president and all that, but the politics that control the president is a lot of pissing contests and it's all. But they all goes to those certain occult formulas I was talking about earlier. So there is a chance that this will be made more public, but there's a lot of resistance to it, and people want this to get at this technology for their own personal or selfish interests. There's also a need to protect people from it. So if with this, it's not, you can't have everybody desiring it. What I would say is I have spoken with a film director over there who wants to build a replica, because he was put in touch with me by Radu. They wrote a film script together. It's a beautiful film script for the first movie, and they were sort of blackballed by Hollywood before, and they asked me to get involved. I'm already a part of the American rights to the book, but they asked me to get involved. And he wanted to build this huge replica and make it would become the biggest tourist attraction in Romania. Of a human replica or size chamber that they would use for the film and then use it as a tourist spot.
Interesting.
Just to educate people on it and to replicate it.
So we have the holographic chamber that you discuss at length in your very well-written book, and then we also have some mention of these tunnels, 3 tunnels, as I recall, that go where? Where do these tunnels lead? Well,
before we discuss the tunnels, I want to mention that there is the projection hall, which I was just about before the break. There's a projection hall in there which shows the history of the world. And it shows the history of the world, but it's bioresonant. So if you look at this viewer or whatever it is, it's going to resonate with your DNA, your auric field, and it's going to show you the history, and it's going to be a concise and summarized history as you would see it. So you might see versions of history that might be a little more attuned to your ancestors than I would see mine. And it goes up to about 400 or 500 AD, and then it cuts off. They didn't know why it cut off. That's a part of the book that Radu discusses. And then we get to the beyond that is the 3 tunnels. There's 3 tunnels, and one of those tunnels goes to Egypt. It goes mysteriously to a similar facility beneath the Giza Plateau, which is the subject of Book 3, Mystery of Egypt. That book follows Transylvania Moonrise, and so that's the subject of that book. That tunnel. Another tunnel goes to Tibet via an offshoot tunnel that goes to Baghdad area, and then the one that Tibet has an also offshoot that goes to Mongolia. So these are ancient tunnels, and they have similar installations in other parts of the world. There might be other installations in other parts of the world, but this is what we know from what's said in this book. Those two tunnels. There is a third tunnel which goes into the inner earth. That is the most mysterious of the tunnels because at that point I don't think it had been explored, and if it had, it certainly wasn't discussed. So those are the three tunnels you were alluding to.
Mm-hmm. Now, as far as the Baghdad facility goes, has that been written about, or is it a known facility that's under God?
Well, see, it's a very key, yes, it's a very key point of this book because it had been discovered probably in the first Gulf War. Probably. It had been stumbled upon. There was a lot of stories about stargates under Baghdad and this newspaper, the Spectrum. Rick Miller used to write for it. It was Ed Young used to publish it. It was a very rabble-rousing newspaper, the Spectrum, and they did the, what is it called, the Vatican Assassins book. They did all the information on the Jesuits and whatnot, and they reported on stargates underneath Baghdad. But this is where I think it showed up in the first Gulf War. And by the second Gulf War, it was definitely accessed. And the Americans were watching this, and when they broke the chamber in Romania, it sent a signal and a holographic readout of the chamber in Baghdad, which told the troops watching it that there was a similar chamber in Romania, and it had just been breached.
Oh, my goodness.
And this is what caught, and they reported up to their authorities, and that's how it got to the president, the commander-in-chief. It said, what are our troops doing in Romania? And that was how all this diplomatic debate and heated argument, which eventually resulted in an alliance between the two countries. So they share Romania. They can't just go in and invade Romania. It's too politically volatile for the Americans, which they would obviously like to do, just for military reasons. And that's nothing against Romania. This is a powers and forces in Romania they do not have control of and they do not understand. So it's very difficult for the Americans to deal with, and it becomes even more volatile in the fourth book for what's discovered in Transylvania, and that's an even bigger issue with bigger forces to deal with. Although it's hard to imagine what would be bigger than what we have already discussed.
Exactly. I mean, this is just monumentous. And also, just recently, Helene and I were discussing on the show the discovery of something underneath the Sphinx's paw in Egypt. And then now you're talking about a tunnel that goes from this facility, this holographic hall of records, all the way into Egypt. And we have to ask the question, we have to wonder, is there a similar hall of records underneath the Sphinx's paw in Egypt that matches what you have discussed and found in Romania?
Yes, but it's not under the Sphinx per se. The Sphinx is not as old as the Sphinx in Romania. The Edgar Casey had said there were like 4 or 5 Sphinxes around, and he didn't get the Romanian one right. He didn't know about it. But he did say maybe he didn't know about it with saying there were 4 or 5, and he said there was a hall of records discovered underneath the Sphinx. Well, they found something. They found something around this 1947 time period, and they smuggled it out to the CIA as a formulation of the CIA, so that they got whatever. They knew something was in there. But there are other chambers beneath the Sphinx. There's a lot of denial, as you're probably familiar with all the shenanigans that go on over there.
Oh, yeah.
But this chamber that's in Egypt is underneath the Giza Plateau, and it's away from the pyramid and the Sphinx. And it's a separate tunnel that somebody at some point tried to dig from those incredible Egyptian artifacts, these wonders of the world, and they tried to go to this secret chamber, but they were blocked off, and there was evidence of an ancient war. But this chamber has its own protective field around it. So it was inaccessible to the ancient Egyptians, who were later than and a less evolved culture than the people who put this chamber together, and might have derived from it on some level. But I'm sure that they did. There are similarities. What were you going to ask me?
Well,
go ahead, Colleen. Go ahead.
My feeling about it was that the Egyptians did interact with these people or beings.
Well, at some level, they did. This particular chamber, from what we're told in the book, is pretty much not accessed by those people because it's more to the core. It's more to the core of what was going on. So the ancient Egyptians had a remnant knowledge of a lot of things, but as they went forward, they were in a slow decay. They were always in sort of a slow decay from an ancient blue race until we have what we have today. But the inside of this chamber, they call it the occult chamber, is I guess right before there's a time travel device inside of the chamber, which is kind of like a lot of crystals and a platform, but outside of it, or into the inner chamber, adjacent is a lot of slate tablets, which turn out to be like holographic DVDs. And you don't even have to put it in a DVD device. You just kind of touch a certain part of it, and it reads out a holographic history of some part of history. And they went to recover as many of these things as they could and bring them back, first to Romania and then America, for them to be studied. So they were there was a much more extensive hall of records apparently in this area than there was in the chamber beneath the Romanian Sphinx, because it would take a whole team to watch all of this history, to see what was involved. And they could only take so many with them in their specialized cars that they had taken. So then there's a time travel device which is only for time traveling into one's consciousness. It doesn't make you physically travel, but you can go back into time, and certain areas are blocked, particularly who made the device. When they go back and try and see who made the device, they're blocked. So there's a censorship on this technology, and it implies less than a total limitless freedom.
Well, it sounds like there were some things built in to prevent people from even finding this place. I mean, when you talk about Caesar and his unusual birth and upbringing and all of that, but yet he was the one, if I understand this correctly, that broke the psychic lock on this room. Is that correct?
Well,
he was the one that got in there when no one else could.
Well, he was able to open up the chamber by seeing a handprint when there was a force field that they couldn't get through this certain part of the tunnel. Once they got to the original tunnel, they broke down and they couldn't get past. And he saw a handprint. He put his handprint on it, and it allowed the force field to come down. It was as if he was destined to do it. Now, whether it would do it with somebody else's DNA or might work too, well, it did work with his. And so he was destined to become to open up this chamber, and he's really on the cusp of a real, what you might call, hybridized human being, in terms of he's hybridized with forces of consciousness. That strong umbilical cord is a manifestation of a lot of chi energy in Asian martial arts. That's chi. That's life force. Because we're all born through our navel. We all come through our navel. And so that's a sign that he has a lot of life force in him. And what it's connected to is from another realm. Because he disappears a few years ago. And from, like, say, a few years ago he disappeared. He departed Department Zero. And this was only told to me in personal letters from Radu, and Radu explained his sadness that he no longer had his mentor available, because Caesar is the one who introduced him to the world of paranormal and metaphysics, which Radu became quite accomplished at in a very short amount of time. And he is remiss. He's talking to me like a friend, and he's saying, I miss him. And he went to become an ambassador to the beings in the inner earth, which implies that he went down one of those tunnels.
Oh, okay. So that's where he went. All right.
Well, that was but it was very off the wall and obscure what he said. Not until I have completed reading the fourth book and traveled to Romania this last summer did I begin to get what you might call an intuition or feel for the legitimacy of it, because it is admittedly a bizarre story. Oh, he's going into the inner earth, because I keep alluding to this fourth book, which I'm working on now, Secret Parchment, and skipping over the second book, which is about the secret parchment, and this is the release of the secret parchment, which is a whole other story. But this book goes, what they found when Romania fell in 1989, or communist Romania fell, there was a lot of archaeology that was opened up. They started looking into this and that, which had been repressed or just not done under the communist regime. And in the area of Transylvania, near an area called Sarmânsejutuza Regia, which is the ancient capital of the Dacian people, the spiritual capital, the heart of Transylvania, which I was just at for my second time this year, there is an area there that was excavated, and by accident, a professor, Constantine, accessed, at the end of the day with one of the workers, he accessed this hidden tunnel. And it went on and on and on until it got to where it was pure gold.
Oh,
and it went on
goodness.
for miles and miles and miles of a golden tunnel. Now, this does not occur in geology. There's no golden tunnels on the earth that they know of, because gold, if you want to get gold, it comes in a little nugget the size of a fingernail.
Right.
And if you want a real big nugget is the size of your fist, that's huge. They will process a ton of gold ore, to get a nice ounce of gold. That's what it takes. So this gold was just incredible. And this, on economic reasoning alone, it is a huge find, and it was all kept secret because in 1990, because it would cause Romania to be invaded.
Oh, definitely. I can just see people coming in now to get the gold from that tunnel.
Yeah, and now it's not going to be invaded because it's a part of NATO, and America is their ally, so that's not likely to happen. And Romania has now adopted their own Homeland Security Service. It's just patterned right after the United States. And so this area of gold, this is and now there's legends, if you take this gold, you've had it. You're done. This is...
Oh, really? So
you'll
be terminated.
Yeah, because
so you're saying that it's not a man-made tunnel that was sort of paved with gold. You're saying that it's an actual gold vein?
Well, that's a very good question. But what you notice when you see artifacts like the Sphinx in Romania, and you'll see other areas in Bulgaria, which I've traveled to. I've traveled all around Bulgaria. And in that area of the world, it's when you see certain sacred sites, you'll see a mountain that looks like a face, and you say, was that sculpted, or is that the way it occurs? And you see a very interesting union of elements with art that's like by a creative consciousness. So there's even, over the area of the Sphinx, if you have a topographical map, which you can see it on YouTube if you go to Mount Omu and a trip to Mount Omu and the Sphinx. It's a video, a 7-minute video I narrated on YouTube, which will show a topographical map over the Sphinx and how it shows a face. Like the Nazca lines show lines?
Yes.
In Peru. Yes. This shows a face. So it's like, and then right, if you draw a line straight down the face, you'll see sacred spots all over this area. One of them is the Sphinx. And at the bottom is the chin. And that area has been known for hundreds of years as the Thorns of Barbush, which is the root word for chin in Romanian. So the ancients knew that this was chin from looking above, which they didn't have air balloons in those days when they called it that. So this is so you see that the ancient peoples had a link to the earth, and the consciousness and the earth linked together in such a way that it created art forms or forms that could be interpreted as art, and they were sacred sites. It's a mysterious aspect of the link between consciousness and physicality. But so this, when you talk about the gold, it's hard to say why this gold formed the way it did. Was it art? Was it nature? Or was it, to my guess, would be it would a combination of both. Mm-hmm. But when they go down into this gold and they find a bed with hieroglyphics on it, they're not necessarily Egyptian hieroglyphics. Mm-hmm. And they send them to top universities and have them analyzed because they got pictures of them. Mm-hmm. And these hieroglyphics read out very. I've explained it in the new book. It's very esoteric. It says, can't even remember what it says. It says I-O. Can't even remember what it says, but one of them is. It says K-R-I-O, Creo.
What does that mean?
I think that's what it says. Well, KR is for Chronos, according to Caesar's people. Chronos is time.
Okay.
And EO is an iteration of the God. I was talking about air, earth, water, fire. Well, IAO or IO is create, survive, destroy.
Wow.
There's a lot. It's even one of the names of the moons of Jupiter, Io. And the moon of Jupiter, Europa, plays into this book as well, because there's a signal from Europa that goes to Antarctica, where there was meltage around a cosmic buoy or antenna in Antarctica, that is tied to Europa, and then it opens up a signal to Transylvania. This is how come the Americans found out about what's going on in Transylvania. It goes to Transylvania, and it goes to Mount McKinley area, where the HARP project is in Alaska.
Oh, my goodness. Okay.
So the main HARP installation, and all that HARP stuff started at Montauk and Brookhaven Labs here on Long Island. So you have these, and there's a big pyramid of disappearance that occurs around this area of Alaska. So you have these major find, and so this was a major hotspot that is tied to the moon of Jupiter, tied to Antarctica, and the Americans found out about this, and they flew Radu down to Antarctica to investigate it, and they were ready to, strangle the Romanians, Department Zero's next, because they said, you're not letting us in on this secret, and the Romanians only had a small file on it, and they didn't know about it. Mm-hmm. And what I found out on this trip there is that Professor Constantine was a real character, because I met somebody who knew him.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow. So you see, the story has teeth.
There's so much to this, Peter. My gosh. I mean, first of all, I have to thank you for bringing this to our awareness. It is an amazing story, but there is so much to it. I mean, at every turn, I'm forced to learn something new with all of the information that you're bringing forward. I mean, it's bringing together the different places on the planet, different places in the planet, the cosmos, the different planets in the solar system, and how everything is connected. It's pretty mind-boggling.
It is, and it
is.
And the Galactic Center coming up in next month with the solstice, and the end of the Mayan calendar. And I have a little bit more news. Are we about to hit a break here? Because I have some more news.
Oh,
we are.
Okay, well, we'll take a break, and I'll give you some incredible news about Dr. David Anderson.
Oh, everyone, please stay tuned for this. Hold on. Stay with us. And we thank you all for staying tuned as we continue our fascinating discussion with Peter Moon, author of several books. And Peter, could you please say the website again where people can find all of your publications?
skybooks.usa.com. That's skybooks.usa.com with the www in front of it.
That's great, and I'll put it up on the website as soon as the show ends, and thank you for telling us that. So you're about to give us some important information, Peter.
Well, yes, I was talking about these tunnels of gold that were discovered in Transylvania, and I was about to say that, yes, some news from Dr. David Anderson. David is the one who brought me over to Romania in the first place 5 years ago, and the second year I went to Romania, he lectured on time extensively on the mechanics of time. He sat down with me and explained certain things, how time is really distance, and it can be subordinated into algebraic equations, and then it can be manipulated with more higher-level math than algebra when you get into the more, analysis and calculus aspects of math. Harder to explain, and he hasn't explained that yet, but he said it's more challenging. He was supposed to release some videos. There was a lot of fallback with his announcement. He did some radio shows, some of which I participated in, which really sort of just showed that he was putting humans into his time chamber, because he could actually show time speeding up and slowing down. He could create those situations. And there were a group of 20 or so of us at Montauk who saw it about 3 years ago. He did a conference. He participated in a conference with me, and people saw this on video. And he was going to show this, release about 5 videos on time and educate the people on time. But there was such a bad reaction by certain quarters, and again the censorship issue, that he withdrew. And
really?
It's good when he withdraws, actually, because he gets more done. The public, God, it's like I couldn't believe when he left in 2000. I think it was 2003 when he departed the scene, and he says, "I won't be able to work with you for 5 more years." And he did. His experiments were relatively low level at that time. They were the size of a basketball. Then it's like in 8 or 9 years, he's got human beings going into them, and he says, "Oh, it's just a very short order before we'll be sending people back 50 years, 2,000 years," and that was 3 years ago. Now, he probably was beyond those experiments, but we really don't know because he doesn't talk about them. So I have had virtually no communication with him. I think he sent me a nice email in the summertime to make sure that I knew that I would be received properly in Romania by his friends. I would be taken care of at certain destination point. I really didn't need his assurance because I knew who I was dealing with, but he went out of his way to assure me that. And I recently heard from him during the storm. When we had the storm down here, I had to go to Starbucks on a laptop when I had my power out. And I heard from him in the midst of this over quite a ridiculous issue. Actually, it has nothing to do with, it's just, but then I heard from him again, and he said that he was going to be re-releasing his website in December. It's going to be coming out again in December. I don't know. It's the Anderson Institute, and I don't know what the exact website address will be, but if you do the search, and I said, well, why don't you release it on December 21st, with my calendar? And he said, that's a good idea. In other words, he wasn't releasing it on that date. I said, do it. It sounds good. He liked the idea, so I assume he will. I might have delayed the release of the information by 2 weeks. I don't know. I think I did by suggesting that.
Peter, you can obviously, and all of the audience can intuit that I'm nowhere close to being a scientist or anything like that, okay? But I think that when you travel into higher consciousness and you visit other realms and are connected to the angelic realm and other dimensions that exist around us, I think that anybody who does that kind of meditation and has those kind of travels is very aware of time and how different it is all over the universe and how it's measured by only our perception as we live our lives here,
Completely perception, yes.
And so since we are perceiving time the way we need to for our own lifespans and existence as it exists right now here as humans, are the experiments that you're talking about that he's doing in sync with sort of higher consciousness and being able to travel your astral body into past time zones and see history or be part of it?
I can't really answer that question with anything but speculative answers because I don't have privy to what he's actually doing. I do know that when he was doing his early level experiments circa 1999 when he met me, and one of his reasons, I think there's a multiplicity of reasons, which he would probably agree with, that sometimes he doesn't even know, but he was very interested in seeking me out because of the spiritual component of what was being encountered in physics, because they were finding out that the spirit is, had been underestimated in traditional scientific circles. Now, and it became very obvious to me, in reading certain physics theories and whatnot, that what they call the observer in physics is the spirit. Well, duh. But they call it the observer, not the spirit.
Yeah.
Same thing. It's a semantic thing, and there's a lot of context to that semantics. So anyway, it's a big factor, and it's perception of it, and all of my work in the Montauk Project led me to a Qigong teacher, Roosevelt Gainey in Brooklyn, he's like, in terms of Qigong and martial arts, he's one of the most advanced people on the planet. If there's somebody more advanced, he wants to meet him and challenge him. Because he wants to get better.
Wow.
So he'll take on anybody, and he's very impressive. But one of the things is, and he's explained to me, is like when there are Qigong masters that can pick an arrow out of the air, that's by shot at them. You can even see sometimes they'll show it on TV.
I've seen it. Yeah.
Well, how do you do it? Well, they're changing their perception of time.
Yeah. Well,
they're doing things that they would consider impossible from if they're walking around in normal mode. But if they can slice a BB out of the air with a sword, how do they do that? It's using the perception that they have that's not ordinarily used. It's called extrasensory, but it's not really extrasensory. It's
a shift.
It's accessing what you have. So if you're going to see time, there's no reason you can't access parts of your brain that would show you these secrets. Because essentially when in this Mystery of Egypt book, the device they describe is much like a mind amplifier. LSD is a mind amplifier. It amplifies certain parts of your mind. The Montauk chair in the Montauk Project was a mind amplifier. Preston has a mind amplifier up in his place in Cairo, New York, which amplifies certain aspects of, your electromagnetic consciousness. So it's amplification. So there is a part of your brain that records everything that happens, and is also linked to what you're recording and what there's a collective. The dolphins have a bigger brain. Theirs is a little more collective than ours are. But we have a collective aspect inside of our brain that's linked to the 100th monkey effect of everybody. Just like a grizzly bear. Grizzly bears, when the first grizzly bear was shot with a gun when the white people came over to America, all of a sudden all those grizzly bears across the continent knew to avoid white people. They would look at Indians with contempt. They weren't afraid of Indians, but they were afraid of white people because they knew white people could kill them. And we have the same faculty within us.
I'm going to take this opportunity to pick up a call here from someone who's been waiting patiently at area code 201, Peter. So hold on, and let's see who's in area code 201. Hello, 201, you're live on the air. What's your name?
Hello?
Hello, what's your name?
Hi, it's Shalina.
Hi, Shalina. Did you have a question for Peter tonight?
Actually, I kind of tuned in, and it's a really interesting conversation, actually. I'm sorry I didn't get to hear the whole thing from the beginning, but everything he's saying is actually pretty interesting as far as how to use the brain and how, there's different ways to, tap into different parts of the brain.
No, that's true, and I think a lot of people who follow a spiritual path and learn how to do that, it's not that difficult once you get involved in it.
I know that I have some type of ESP and telepathy, and I notice that, if by me meditating, sometimes I can tend to make it, it's stronger, per se.
Yes.
But
Well,
I've read
connection
about
develops,
trying to find, I've tried to read about ways to try to make it where I can tap into different parts of the brain that I don't really use.
Oh, there's tons of information out there and all kinds of books and on the Internet. There are classes that are given in astral travel and all of that. So, yeah. Well, good for you, Shalina.
I wanted to send an email to you because I had come across, I was watching a show on the History Channel, and I became introduced with the man John Lear, who I think his father invented the Lear jet.
Mm-hmm.
And there was an interview that he did with a man, and he disclosed like a lot of information about UFOs, extraterrestrials, like what things that the government knew because of the fact that he worked on Area 51.
Oh, interesting.
And when Roswell happened, and his friend actually worked there, and his friend used to take him up on the site and show him every day when we would test fly some of these UFOs over Area 51. And he did a long interview about that, about JFK's assassination, about like what the moon really looks like before the pictures are photoshopped. And I know I had read on your website that if there was ever any information or anything that applies to anything, the things you guys talk about, I could forward the link to you. So this
absolutely do that, Shalina.
Because it's it's so much information sometimes that I had to take a break because I was just like overwhelmed with the things that
you can get a little dizzy, right?
It was overwhelming.
Thank you for your call, and definitely email us that link and the information that you have. We'd love to look at it.
You just give me what your email is just to make sure I have the correct.
Just go to angelslighthouse.com, and there's a way to email us right there on the radio page and also just at the website on the front page.
And also, what's the name of the website that, I'm sorry, your guest, I forgot his name. What's the name of his website
Peter?
that he said? Yeah.
Peter, she wants to know the name of your website.
Skybooks.com, www.skybooks.usa.com. I also have a blog at digitalmontauk.com, digitalmontauk, montauk.com.
And we'll post those right after the show for you, Peter. Thank you for your call, Shalina. We appreciate it so much.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, that was some nice commentary there, and she'll send us some more information. And so, I'm sorry, Peter, you were I just wanted to get to that caller. She's been waiting for quite a while, and we appreciate her call. Peter, you were talking about time.
Where was I?
Well, actually, I think we also have one more. Let's see. Gray Artist has another question for Peter also. It says, do you think time travel will only be possible through technology, or could it be done by a human just with their body, like changing their frequency or something? That's the question.
Well, I would say yes, definitely. It would be possible because there, if it means anything, in the book Transylvania Moonrise gives a description of a space translation. In other words, when they go from Transylvania to Tibet, and how the perception and the reality is changed. And there's a lama involved who describes how it can also be done with time. So, according to these characters, yes, it is possible, and it would stand to reason that everything in the brain, everything in the human body, everything in the DNA is all a mimicry of creation anyway. It's all mimicking. It's all as above, so below. It's a mimicry of creation. DNA is a template of literally God, for lack of a better word. So, yes, it's all a matter of accessing it and lining it up.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think that people who do astral travel and connect with a frequency or energy field that's able to transport them, I think that I don't want to say common, but I think a lot of people who study this are able to sort of go back in history and see visions or participate in activities that were occurring at wherever their energetic body takes them. And I think that what we're talking about here is a bigger shift in time travel where someone could actually appear in that place. Is that correct?
Well, yes, and one thing you have to realize about the astral travel and the spiritual realm And if you look at it astrologically, from astrological correspondences, which are only reflections of the tree of life, which is the same as the DNA, is corresponding to the DNA, the tree of life, the Kabbalistic tree of life. Neptune, which is the spirit, is the realm of illusion. So a lot of times when people go into their spiritual recitations of what happened in the astral plane, there's an illusionary, ethereal nature, which isn't always quite accurate. And this is one of the reasons that spiritual channels or whatnot are not always right, because they're dealing in an illusionary nature. Although it is one of, Neptune is the god of the sea, and the sea, what is the sea? The sea is chaos. The sea is, it's formless. It's formless, so it can shape into things. It can shape here and shape there, and it's like trying to predict the stock market. You're constantly dealing with chaotic factors, and that's Neptune. And as you get to the higher realms of the higher energies of what's called Kether, it's ruled by Pluto, and Pluto is the god of the underworld. So you have this polarity. You have a polarity which, Pluto is relentless. It's something you can't escape from. And Earth kind of gets caught in between. Earth is like you have an underworld on the Earth and you have an overworld. So we're sitting here in Earth, and it's the correlation between these forces that we're moving into in this new time, the end of the Mayan calendar, which is a new time, when the veils between these three worlds, heaven and earth and the underworld, are going to be a little more thin. It's going to be
they're
thinner,
much thinner.
And it's going to be what you, and one of the secret parts of the secret parchment, and I'm boiling it down into a very concise wording, is what you think is what you get. And this is one of the messages in the secret parchment, although it's said in much more flowery language and then extensive language, but what you think is what you become, and this is what's supposed to be much more prevalent at the end of the Mayan calendar. So if you think, I'm going to get $1 million, you might get $1 million. If you think I'm going to die
things are
die
manifesting
of
so
XYZ,
quickly.
you're going to die of XYZ.
So those thoughts are turning into form almost instantly sometimes. It's amazing.
And by the way, this is mind amplification. Your mind, your thoughts are amplified. In other words, they're more resonant, they're stronger. And then there will be a collective game that goes on with people. There'll be people thinking, it's all going to be good, it's all going to be bad, we're all going to be put in FEMA camps, and there'll be wars of thought, and the thought will be, like I've been to churches in the Midwest where the minister tells me that all the local church people are fighting against each other. They're having, I mean on the astral plane. They're not fighting physically. They're like having angelic wars, and this one is a demon, and it's just crazy. I thought the Christians just went to church. No, they're playing games. So there'll all be the war, and then there'll be the people who believe in the 144,000, and they'll be praying for this and praying for that, and you'll have people all over the world, and all of a sudden the thoughts will become the prayers will become a little more potent, or maybe a lot more potent. And this is the new times we're moving into, and
it's exciting. I mean, these are exciting times. They're trying times, and what we're hearing, and I think the last caller, just typifies what we hear a lot of. People want answers. People want to be able to go deeper within their own selves, within their own minds, and access these kinds of things. And I think, Peter, that's why your books are so important.
Yes, and if you could take this opportunity again to tell our audience where they can buy your books and connect with you, Peter.
Yes, www.skybooks.usa.com, skybooks.usa.com. I can be emailed at petermoon333@gmail.com, petermoon333@gmail.com.
Well, that's awesome, Peter, and this hour and a half has gone so quickly because you were such a fascinating guest, don't you think, Patricia?
Oh, my gosh, it went way too quickly. I have so many more questions for you, Peter, but we're going to have to just have you back on the show, that's all.
We will.
Well, yes, and I did send you. I sent you the Mystery of Egypt as well.
Yes.
And we didn't even talk about Moonrise. And when the fourth book comes out, which 2 or 3 months, I will. You'll get a bigger feeling for that, and we can talk more about that.
Well, we're going to have to invite you back. I know our listening audience would love to hear from you, especially about all this new information. So we'll be sure to put you on the schedule for that.
Thank you.
Well, thank you to everybody. Thank you, Peter, especially for spending your valuable time with us. And thank you to all of our listening audience. We're very grateful that you're with us, and we hope to have Peter on again soon.